So considering like, you went from growing up, going into the breaks, going into, or sorry, I guess like stacking all these skills, going, or well, I guess like not in, going into the Christian space, but not intending to make music for the church, but like for other people, to come to the church. And then you have like, your collective Dream Junkies. You guys made the Good Religion album. You transitioned like successfully into the YouTube space and everything like that. I guess like the question I had is, would you say that you solidified yourself to be, I guess, when it's all said and done, would you say you've solidified yourself to be a top 10 CHH artist in the game? Just because whenever we talk about like who's the GOAT or who's this or who's that, people talk about Lecrae and everything like that. And, Lecrae did his thing. Like he's that guy, he's the guy who pretty much brought CHH into a whole new space. But we never talk about the guys who came up with them. Who else is kind of like, on that, I guess, like top 10 list or whatever, like Mount Rushmore? Would you say like you solidified yourself with your work as being like, I guess like when your career is all said and done, as like a top 10 CHH artist in this space? Or
I don't, bro. I've never thought about that a day in my life.
Yeah, no,
it's such a funny question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like it's just like it's just not something I've ever really gave much thought to. I think
it's just when you
if we're talking about like,
yeah,
if we're talking about discoverability and like how many good artists that I kind of have been around and helped behind the scenes, I don't know of anyone else that you could point to that's had kind of his hand and influence in so many different artists. Like people, even till this day, like I'm homies with I Am Rescued, and like me and Nick have like helped him out in little small ways here and there, and we've always maintained a relationship. I think he's going to be huge. There's a lot of artists, man. So no, I don't think about that at all. Like I don't care in the slightest, because I think it's like saying who's the best rec league basketball player. Okay. It's like saying like who's the best like Division 4 basketball player. It's like, who cares? Like I don't care who's the best at my local park. I don't care who's the best at my Like I think I'm more interested in who is able to make the most amount of impact on their terms. I'm more interested in, if we're going to talk about hip hop, like let's just talk about hip hop. Like, and so if someone can cross over, to me, that's a W. But like the microcosm of like who's a top 5 or a top 10 Christian rap, I just don't care. Now, I will say, if we're going to put Good Religion in the Christian rap category, I don't know of any albums that have been better than that, But then Christian rap fans are also weird in that they don't listen to secular rap. So like they got weird taste. They'll be like, I like this album, and it's like, bro, like this man really just remade a Kanye album. Like this isn't like Good Religion hadn't been done before. Like there was not an album like that in mainstream or secular. Like there's nothing you can point to where like if you were to point to some of these other albums that people would say are like my best, top 5 Christian rap, it's like, bro, it's just a Kanye album but with Jesus on it. Like so I will say that, like, if we're counting Good Religion as a Christian hip hop album, I don't know of anybody that put out a better Christian hip hop album than that. But again, that we weren't even trying to do that. Like we weren't trying to make the best Christian hip hop album. We were just we were trying to make a great album. Like that was the goal. It's like, let's make a great album. And so, yeah, man. So anyway, I don't really give much thought to these questions because one, I think the Christian consumer tends to be goofy and not really know what they're listening to because they don't listen to secular music. So they can't tell the difference between who is and isn't actually creating something versus kind of just biting something from the mainstream. And then two, it's like talking about who's the best at a Division 4 in Division 4 basketball. Like who's the best overseas player? Like I just don't care. Like who's the best football player in Canada? Like who cares? Like it doesn't matter to me who's the best in Canada because the NFL is where it's at, and I think once we have guys that go to the league as a Christian rapper, not, I don't care. But when you get and your monthly listeners at the level of whoever, then I think we go, okay, well, that's interesting. Like let's just say Caleb Gordon becomes top 5 streamed artist of all time, and he's up there with Drake, and he's up there with Taylor Swift, and then that I'm interested in that. Like, I'm interested to see what happens. Is that possible? Will that happen in the next year? I think it could. I just think the Christian consumer has a lot of growing to do and maturity to do to actually like see the value in that.
Yeah, no, I would say that for sure. Just because, like, yeah, even growing up listening to Christian albums, I didn't know that like some artists were probably like biting certain flows or certain styles from like other artists or whatever. And yeah, I guess the reason I asked it is just because, like, I guess like 5-6 years ago when I jumped back into the Christian space, it seemed like all you guys, like Lecrae and you know, whoever else like was in that space at that time, you guys were young, and then it's like and now we push 5-6 years later, it's kind of like, I think we're in a space and time where it's kind of like, okay, like it seems like we're kind of like entering this new space where now like the younger artists are coming in, and then the older artists are moving up, and then it's kind of like when we look back, it's like, you know, like I guess I don't know, I just asked that because like stuff like this never gets talked about, so I was just curious, and just wanted to pick your brain on that, just because yeah, I don't know, just
yeah,
curious,
I think to your point, I would just say to your point, like my issue with Christian hip hop in general is that it's too small of a space for people to be this zealous about. You know, like the space is so small that I personally think like the less time we spend talking about the space and who's the best in the space, and the more time we spend talking about how to actually expand each and individual artist to build the optimal fan base, that, and then let the space become organic and not like, it feels very manufactured. It's always felt very manufactured. I think that becomes the W. Like if we're like, yo, let's get all of these artists, like think of who your top 20 Christian rap artists are, right? How can all these people get to 1 million followers, right? And now that all of them are at 1 million followers and all of them are at 2 million monthly listeners, then that conversation becomes interesting to me, because now we're actually talking about crossover and bleed over into the mainstream. We're talking about touring. We're talking about some pretty cool stuff, if you ask me. I think these conversations of who's the best amongst this little microcosm, in my opinion, I don't know if they do a whole lot of good, because 100,000 followers, like I'm at a space where like I'm at 93,000 followers, bro. That's still small in the relative landscape of what is music. Like forget hip hop, just music. So I think the audiences have the potential of being so much bigger if we stop caring about this little microcosm as much and said, let's just make the very, 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 very best music we can make. And whether it's played at churches or not, whether we're doing youth groups or not, I don't care about that side of it. And I think the guys you see that have that mindset, Miles Minnick, Caleb Gordon, No Big Deal, those are the guys doing the best, like numbers wise. Right? Like they're really out here from every measurable metric. Those are the guys actually doing the best. Kyron the Light. And I want everybody to think bigger and just have more imagination. I think that's the best net positive to Christian hip hop is more Christian rappers just building actual businesses to become bigger artists. And then at some point having a festival or having a playlist or collaborating. But I think this, like, I don't know, like we judge on a curve, and it's just not, it's just not interesting. Like judging on a curve is like, yeah, man, like because the floor is so low and the ceiling is even low, then we give passes to stuff that just isn't that exciting to me.